Hi, I'm Billy Keels, the host of the Going Long podcast. Every week, I'm going to be here interviewing the absolute best in the business as it relates to real asset investing, as well as real Main Street investors. We're going to be having conversations where you can listen in, and that's going to help you to continue on your path to education so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident in investing long distance. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you're liking it as well, because that way you can get every single episode as soon as it comes out. And by the way, don't forget to leave today's episode a 5-star review. Let's go ahead and listen to today's conversation. Welcome to the Going Long podcast, and we're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels, and you know what? If you've ever wanted to escape the feeling of being a hostage to the 1031 exchange or even paying up to 50% in capital gains taxes, then guess what? You're going to want to listen to every single word of today's conversation, because today's guest is not only an entrepreneur, an investor, and an expert in the world of deferred sales trusts. He has also served lots of billionaires. He's also served doctors, lawyers, and really high-paid professionals. He's also the host of Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast and the founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions. I'd like to welcome to the show, Brett Swarts. Brett, welcome to the show, man.
Billy, I'm excited to be here, add value to you and your audience.
Hey, man, this is going to be really, really cool. And already knowing that you've been on this side of the pond and you've got some great places that you're thinking about and you're all the way on the left coast of the United States, this is going to be an awesome conversation. So, but Brett, as you know, I do like to ask everybody kind of the same 5 questions. We'll start with 2 in the beginning and 3 at the end. And the very first one is, where do you live in the United States?
I live in a place called Northern California. It's near the Silicon Valley. I actually originally grew up in the Bay Area. It's what it's also known as. My particular place is called Roseville. It's in Sacramento. It's about an hour and 30 minutes from like San Francisco. So it's a beautiful place, kind of foothills. It's about an hour and a half also from what's called Lake Tahoe, which is a world-renowned mountainous region, beautiful lake, amazing skiing. They had the Olympics there, I believe, in 20, 30 years ago, in Squaw Valley, which was pretty amazing too. So it's a beautiful place, and that's where I live.
Awesome. So that's actually one of the towns that I will be visiting sometime soon. And the very first place I ever went skiing was in South Lake Tahoe. So a place that I know well. I fell a lot, but hey, I had a good time. Listen, so great. You're in Roseville, but what is the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, so I have to say just spending time with my family, after an amazing podcast interview. Sometimes as a podcaster, you don't know the guests that you're going to have on. And, I have my booking agent book folks, and I was completely blown away by this guest that I had, so much so that I subscribed to his YouTube channel, Master Talk. And I think it'd be good for anyone who's listening, just with communication or sales or consulting or podcasters. This guy's name is Brendan Kumasari. And he's out of Montreal, and literally just my mind was just blown. Like, I was one of those moments where I was just kind of tired, ready for the day to be over. And this is my last podcast of the day. And Tuesdays are my days where I'm just batching multiple podcasts in a row, and didn't have a clue. And like, I'm trying to just look up his stuff at the very end. And I'm just like one of those, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is like, a transformational type of communication coaching that he does. And so I subscribed to his podcast, and then I went to go for a run. And my daughter came with me and went to the park, and I got to work out and relax a little bit. That was the most positive part in the last 24 hours. Awesome, man. That is, that's fantastic. And so thanks for sharing that. And by the way, if you're not watching Brett and I think you need to check it out, because he's got this really, really cool background. You can actually see all the things from Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. And I know we're going to jump into some more of what you're doing. And also, by the way, I'm father of 5. So I just commend you and your spouse, because that is amazing. I mentioned to you before, we have 2, and having a house with 7 people in it. Kudos to you, man. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's 100% work, 100% joy, especially when they're in the younger ages. And my wife's the rock star there, and yeah, we're blessed to be able to have multiple kids, and it's amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. So listen, I gave a couple of highlights, Brett, and talked about some of the things just really quickly, but I would love for you to share with the Going Long audience, kind of what are some of the different decisions that you made in your life to get you to this point in your journey? Yeah, great question. So, growing up,
loved playing sports, loved working on teams, loved competition, loved learning. I was always kind of curious about subjects that I liked. I dove into stuff I didn't like. I wasn't that excited about. So I think it helped me in my journey to get mentors and get partner with or work for or with those who are ahead of me. And that helped me to grow and to learn. And I've always kind of been the tortoise versus the hare, Billy, right? It takes me a little while to get it, but once I get it, I tend to, take it maybe to the next level and try to, really make an impact for others using, different strategies we're going to talk about, or even in sports. I was a 6 foot, white guy who could shoot and play basketball, right? And I was able to get a scholarship and play. And maximizing my potential has kind of been, I was the younger brother of my older brother, then also the youngest the youngest of like 9 cousins. And so I always had folks ahead of me that I could learn from. It takes me a little while to get it, but once I get it, I tend to really improve it and maximize the potential of whatever that thing is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely does make sense. And I can relate to you a lot in that it takes me a little bit of time to get it, but usually once I do that, go really well. And I think you're very humble, because if everything is correct, you were also the captain of the basketball team. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was able to. That small NAIA school, right? But we did beat UC Davis that year, who actually went to the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago. But this is back in like 2007, right? And so they weren't maybe as good as they are now. But that's pretty sweet. It's pretty fun. And yeah, so growing up and getting the scholarship to play basketball, I was able to be the captain of the team, which is really cool.
Yeah, man, that's phenomenal. And also I'm sure that we'll see a lot of that, how that leadership plays out, and even a lot of the things that you're doing today. So appreciate you helping us to get an understanding of some of the things that you've done up until now. But, because you are the first person that's really going to help us to understand this world that maybe many people don't understand. And one of the things that I would love for you to talk about is just kind of the basics. Like when we think about something like a 1031 exchange, can you help people to understand exactly what that is and why that's important, especially from a tax perspective? And then we can build from there.
Absolutely. So most high net worth individuals who own investment real estate, they struggle with capital gains tax when they go to sell. And so the 1031 exchange allows you to sell an investment real estate property and 1031 it into, or trade it, if you will, into a like-kind investment property, therefore deferring the tax. And the tax, depending on what state you're living in, and depending on how long you've owned it and how much depreciation you received, can be it could be as much as 30 to 50% of your gain. And so the important part is to be able to use the time value of money. Instead of paying that tax, you can actually defer it by a legal tax incentive that the IRS allows you to do via Section 1031 of the tax code. And so you're just taking your equity. Let's say you own a property for $1 million, it's worth $3 million. Instead of just selling and paying the tax on that $2 million gain, you can sell it and you can roll it all into the next property and keep all of that wealth building for you.
So that is phenomenal. So you've helped us understand. So this is really about a tax deferral strategy in the 1031. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about some of those parameters. And I guess 2 things. Number 1, we're talking about real estate. Would that also include things like businesses outside of real estate?
Yeah, so great question. So although a 1031 could work for a business, I've never actually seen someone practically use one, because most folks who have highly appreciated businesses, they are not looking to go in and sell a high and roll it into another business, because it's such a hands-on type of thing. Whereas real estate is where it's more used. So technically, yes, for businesses, but it has to be like-kind businesses. Whereas real estate is like-kind real estate that can be more passive. So, but the biggest thing about the 1031 exchange is it's like the Blockbuster, right? It's kind of a way which gives you some tax deferral. But it can be a big challenge, and so perhaps we can touch on that.
Please do expand, because I think this is a little bit about some of the parameters that you have to abide by to actually utilize a 1031, and then from there, I'd really love to get into the world of DST. But let's start there.
Yeah, great question. So I don't know if you remember getting married, Billy, but I got married. I had a chance to get to know my wife in high school, and then we were friends for a while, and then we were able to date in college for another 4 years, and then have an engagement and get married. We had a long time to be able to get to know each other and establish that foundation. Well, the blockbuster or the 1031 is like a blockbuster and like a shotgun wedding. And this is the biggest thing that it really is painful for a lot of our clients and myself. You see, in 2006 and 5, when I was just getting started in real estate, a lot of clients were buying real estate and were overpaying for real estate via the 1031 exchange because of what's called the 45-day window to identify and 180 days to close. And we call this the shotgun wedding. You get engaged in 45 days and you have to get married within 180 days. So you have to follow these rules. Yep. And if you mess up on these rules, the whole thing fails and you pay the tax. Yep. And so the 1031, our parents taught us to sell high and buy low, not sell high and buy higher 180 days later. And that's unfortunately what the 1031 it kind of forces you to do. And that's like Blockbuster too. I'll tie that in here. So I don't know if you remember going to a Blockbuster and you would show up on a Friday night and you see that movie and that movie was behind that, that cardboard.
Yep.
And you're all excited to go get that movie. But as you're walking there, someone's about 2 or 3 steps ahead of you and they look at you and they smile and they grab that same movie you're about to get. Right. And you're like, oh my gosh, like that's a bummer that it's sold out. I got to settle for my second thing. Or let's imagine you even got the movie. That's pretty cool. But then you have 3 days to return it, right? And if you don't return it, you get a penalty, right?
Yep.
And then if you forgot to rewind it, you get a penalty. Well, that's like the 1031. It's very restrictive. You have to do equal or greater value, which is the second rule, meaning you have to buy something of equal or greater value, right? And that can cause also some challenges as well. Like you don't have as much of a selection. You're also not diversified. You have to stay within investment real estate to investment real estate. And you're also the timing, which we touched on, you're having probably overpay for a property, especially in a high seller's market with low inventory, which is what we're seeing right now.
Yep.
So that's like the Blockbuster way of doing things. And we believe there's a better way. It's known as Deferred Sales Trust, not a Delaware statutory trust, also, But they're both kind of DSTs, and that's the Netflix way of doing things.
Got you. Okay, perfect. So it sounds like that was the way that you could do things. You had some parameters that said, hey, listen, you have to figure it out in 45 days and you have to purchase in the 180 days and you have equal or greater value. And so I love that Blockbuster analogy. And by the way, yeah, it did happen to me once or twice where I wanted to get the video and there was somebody just in front of me. So I can relate to that. It really hurt. So we talk about now, you've just given us kind of an idea about the Deferred Sales Trust. So could you do us a favor, take us from that kind of blue and gold Blockbuster days and bring us up to today and talk to us a little bit about what exactly is a Deferred Sales Trust and kind of who is the person that this is for?
And so, yes, great question. And I'm going to use the avatar that actually was the motivation for launching this company. And this person had worked for 20 or 30 years, right? And this was in the 0506 market. And they poured blood, sweat, and tears. They're working their day job. They're also investing in real estate, and they're building up this wealth. And this wealth represents their retirement. It represents their security. They're getting cash flow. And they had sold high, and they kept exchanging. But then guess what? Something happened in 08, and it's known as the 2008 kind of crash, economic crash. And all of a sudden, they saw their wealth of their properties drop in half. And the lenders chasing them down for renegotiating their terms, and the taxes having to be renegotiated, and tenants not paying rent. And they went from all the blood, sweat, and tears of all their wealth and being very wealthy and secure to all of a sudden everything is upside down and they're stressed out and they're struggling. And that's actually what happened. This is the story of a lot of my friends, family, and clients when I was at Marcus & Millichap. And Marcus & Millichap, for your listeners, is just a real estate investment brokerage firm where we help people buy and sell mainly multifamily properties. And that's what I was doing in Northern California. And at that same time, I was newly married and I was trying to make it in the business. And I don't know, Billy, if you've ever been in a spot where you're so scared, you're not sure how you're going to feed your family, but that's where I was. And that's also where a lot of my clients were. Although they were wealthy, they were fighting the banks and they were losing. Some of them lost everything on that 08 crash. Right before this, though, I was doing pretty well. I was succeeding. I was growing in the business. 08 hits and everything stops. And so I have to pivot and adjust to what's going on. Kind of what's happening right now with COVID with a lot of folks in different parts of the world. And at that time, I'm going, what is the best way to do this? Well, we learned from a gentleman who taught us about the Deferred Sales Trust. And so by day, I was learning about that and applying that to the business. But by night, I did what every good entrepreneur does. And you get a side business and a side hustle to make this thing work. And so by night, I was working at a place called Cheesecake Factory. It's a restaurant to support my family and wife at home. And because in real estate, commercial real estate brokerage, it's 100% sink or swim. You either make a big commission or you make zero. And that's kind of what was happening in that 08 crisis. So So it's kind of this dual thing where I'm trying to help my clients out and I'm going through my struggles as well. And then we learned about this deferred sales trust. And as I started to apply this to my clients and help them with their real estate, my business started to grow. And fast forward, that was like in 2009 when that happened. I've applied to the deferred sales trust to provide what's called transformational exit planning. I learned the hard way of how to do it the hard way. And now there's actually a better way, and it's the Netflix way. And that's really about what we're about here versus just a transaction. So with the deferred sales trust, you're able to now sell real estate, pay off all of your debt, move it into a diversified liquid portfolio of investment grade securities, but also go into real estate passively, let's say with a syndicator, right? With an operator. In fact, we just did a deal in Georgia. A gentleman sold it for $7.6 million. And he was faced with a 1031. He was a baby boomer and he didn't want to overpay for a property. And he had all this debt, $4.5 million of debt. So instead of overpaying for a property, he moved all of his equity into the trust. And from there, he's going to put it in hard money lending. He's actually going to put it with a good friend of ours, and $500,000 he's already put with one of their apartment complex syndications, and put another $2 million with another syndicator as well. And that's created what's called transformational exit planning for him, because he no longer has to have the toilets, trash, the liability. He doesn't have to manage the tenants. He can be out of the state of California, right, where its prices are through the roof. And he can diversify and truly retire from all of that. So I'll pause there, see if that makes any sense. If you have any questions there.
Yeah, so it does it makes a lot of sense. And I love that you gave us a specific example. So this is really for the person who's been already involved in building their business on the side or investing and have been doing it for, let's say, 15, 20, 30 years, and is really looking to not have to worry about the tenants, toilets, and termites as they talk about, but really looking for, as you talked about, the transformational type of exit plan. Also sounded like you're able to diversify. You can stay within the same type of asset, but really geographically diversify or with different types of areas that you can play. Maybe it could be self-storage, it could be multifamily apartment complexes, or pretty much whatever. I guess the one question I would have is where are the limitations in terms of where your deferred sales trust can invest?
Great question. Let's start with the limitations of the 1031, which is really important, and then we'll compare it to the deferred sales trust. So in a 1031, awesome. The whole entity must move. So most folks, they'll sell, let's say, a 20-unit apartment complex, and they'll buy a 40 unit in the same town, right? They'll just double their units, and they'll just maybe even just increase their debt. And so they haven't really diversified. I mean, they've gotten more units, but they haven't actually diversified an asset class, right? Or product type, or geographical location, or even, securities to get some liquidity, right? And so that's the first thing. The 1031 is very restrictive. In fact, even with syndications, most syndications, you have to have the entire entity to move. Whereas in our deal, each syndicator can go their separate way into their own deferred sales trust and not have to be tied to anyone else and still defer their tax. We just did a $16.7 million deal in Phoenix for that exact multifamily deal for that reason. Most of the investors paid their tax. This one deferred his tax. So 1031, very restrictive. Deferred sales trust, Netflix, right? Very, very flexible, meaning you don't have to go in like-kind real estate. You don't have to do it with any short period of time. And then you can send it to multiple operators, syndicators with multiple product types, and you don't have to do equal or greater value, right? And so when you open up those kind of like, I call it the blue ocean. When you start swimming with the blue ocean where there's not a lot of blood in the water, which is like the 1031, where everyone's chasing deals and everyone's in a frenzy to overpay and everything's really restrictive, all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is actually pretty calm waters, and I can relax. I can lower my stress. I can lower my debt. I can be diversified. And I can truly retire and be passive if I want to. And so hopefully that answers the question. It's very, very flexible, and it's at your own timing, which is, I think, the number one thing for all of this.
Okay. And so then that makes sense. And it sounds like it can give you more options, right? Number one, you're not stuck in, I say stuck, but you're not in this exact same 1031 exchange. You're not moving the entire block from one place to the next. Here, you can actually say, okay, I have an entire pool and I want to split this pool up so that I can invest in X, Y, and Z type of opportunities. I guess with that, probably people would say, imagine you're someone who's been working for maybe 10 years, 15 years, and you've really had a great ride since 2008. You got in right in 2010, something like that. And you're exiting. And now you're in your mind, you're thinking, okay, do I do 1031 exchange or do I do deferred sales trust? So we're not quite at those 30 years, right? But I'm sure that you're seeing more and more people. So maybe what are some of the thought process that is happening for some of your clients who maybe aren't in that 30 and they're more like in the 10, they've ridden the wave the last 10 years?
Great question. So you want to ask yourself a couple questions. What is your wealth plan, right? And where do you want to be in 1, 3, 4, 5 years? And how are you going to get there with the least amount of risk and the most amount of flexibility and achieving your goals, right? So you want to just, first of all, map that out. And that's step number 1. Step number 2 is you want to actually determine your tax liability. Figure out what your basis is versus what you would sell for and what your gain would be. And then next step is just, what are your options? You can 1031, you can Delaware Statutory Trust, you can Charitable Remainder Trust, you can Deferred Sales Trust, which is our favorite for most scenarios, given the marketplace we're in now, which is, especially in the U.S., highly appreciated, low inventory, lower interest rates. We have the perfect storm going on. This perfect storm is prices that are through the roof. We've been here before, and potential big changes, potential corrections of real estate. And so this is the plan. You can sell high, get out of debt, get diversified, get liquid, and just be patient. Again, now you're swimming in the blue water, right? So you want to ask yourself the question: do I want to be swimming in the blue water? Do I want to be my powder dry on the sidelines? In fact, in 2006, a gentleman did this. I call this the Monday morning quarterback. He did exactly this. He sold high and he looked around at these values. It didn't make any sense for the 1031. He sold a $20 million asset in Minnesota across the street from the Minnesota Vikings stadium. And then he bought low 5 years later because guess what? His property was foreclosed on by the bank from the other buyer who bought it at the high price. And he was sitting in his Deferred Sales Trust. So he got on the sidelines, all tax deferred, and then he bought it back at 60 cents on the dollar. And that's what the Deferred Sales Trust allows you to do, is to trade markets, but truly do transformational trading when you're not just selling high and buying higher, you're selling high and buying low. Mm-hmm. And so that's really just understanding the timing aspect and asking yourself, am I in a highly appreciated market? Do I believe it's a good time to be a seller? Yes. Do I believe it's a good time to be a buyer? Probably no, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a good time to be a buyer. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I've established that. So what tool allows me to transform marketplaces without having to do it within 180 days? And that's when the Deferred Sales Trust in our book is hands down the best way to create and preserve more wealth, especially whether it's 5, 10, 15 years. It doesn't matter how much appreciation, as long as it's big enough. By the way, our minimum is $1 million in net equity, and we need a gain of about $500,000 or so to make this thing make sense.
Okay. Well, you just answered one of the questions that I was just getting ready to ask you, like when does it actually make sense? But also too, you started a little bit on helping to help our audience understand which questions they should be asking themselves. But also too, you're an educator. So can you maybe tell us a little bit about your process? I mean, you've given us some clear indications right now in terms of when it would make sense. But let's say I want to reach out and just help me understand, what does that process of getting educated by you and your ecosystem look like today, Brett?
Great question. So we're like a guide, right? So by the way, I'm like a nurse or an anesthesiologist, or imagine going to the doctor, Billy. Okay. I'm not the brain surgeon going to do the surgery, but I'm going to take you in. I'm going to, I'm going to take your pulse, right? And maybe do some blood work and kind of see where things are at. But the actual brain surgeon is the tax attorney, CPA. He's the one putting everyone back together. So the first step is just simply gathering the facts, right? Helping to either clarify your vision with you, or just bring your vision out of what you're looking to accomplish. So that's the basis. And then obviously establishing the why behind it as well, whether it's a legacy play for a lot of our clients who have built up a massive amount of wealth, which, by the way, according to the American Bankers Association, the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet is happening right now. And it's about $17 trillion that's going to pass from one generation to the next in the next 20 years. And these are the baby boomers. And in fact, there's about 77 million in the U.S. alone, and there's about 10,000 turning 65 every day, let alone the entire world, right, where there's also tons of baby boomers that are also have a massive amount of wealth. So the biggest thing is, how do they transfer that from one generation to the next without getting hammered by capital gains tax and still being able to retire and actually kind of enjoy and be more passive? So we're going to clarify all of that. What stage of life are you in? What is your goals, right? What does that look like? And then we're going to look for clues, right? Success leaves clues, such as, what's your depreciation schedule look like? Well, it's fully depreciated, Brett. I've owned this property for 27 and a half years. It's multifamily. Okay. Would you like a brand new depreciation schedule? Would you like the old one? Oh, I like a brand new one, Brett. Okay, great. Well, we can do that with the Deferred Sales Trust. So we check off that box. Okay, great. You're in this massive amount of debt. Would you like to be in debt or out of debt? Well, I'd like to be out of debt. Okay, let's do the Deferred Sales Trust. Check that off. Would you like to diversify or stay with your single thing? And we're just going to check off all of these number of things. And then we're going to just draw a line down the piece of paper and say, looks like these solve these top issues for you, top challenges. Looks like this doesn't. What would you like to do? So the goal is just to provide clarity. I want to educate. I don't want to sell. I just want to educate. In fact, this is what Steve Jobs would go around to all of his Apple stores, and this is what he would say. He said, he'd go in and say, hey, I never want you to sell. I only want you to educate. And that's just what we're about. We're really about educating. And the cool thing is we don't charge anything for the due diligence. And we only get paid if your deal closes. And so we try to take the pressure off, provide education, give clarity, talk about our track record, which is the next most important thing. Thousands of closes over 25 years, over a dozen no-change IRS audits, not one single issue with the IRS, and batting 1,000, no pending legal litigation. The tax attorneys provide audit defense. So you get this dream team. That's the next part of the vision, where you're not just getting Brett, you're getting the amazing tax attorney, you're getting the amazing financial advisor who's separate from me, and we all work as a team to help execute this transformational exit plan, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. You're putting together this transformational exit plan, and it sounds like you're the point guard running the show again. You're basically the point of contact, and you're building the team around you to ultimately be successful, right?
You got it. You're the quarterback. You're the point guard. And I'm like the offensive coordinator, right? And I'm like calling down the plays, like, hey, what do you think? Here we go. Okay, now let's execute it, and let's all do this together. Yeah, so we're all working as a team, and that's probably one of the best things about this. And it's a little more complex than your average deal, but you're getting a team, and that team is going to be, it's your dream team. And we're all in this to win it together. Defer your tax, maximize your wealth opportunity, optimize your taxes as well. And when we do that together, then the transformation happens.
Okay. And that sounds fantastic. And since you've taken us a little bit in that journey, and you've talked about being able to do a lot of the due diligence up front and really helping to educate, I guess once there is the opportunity, is that something that's more of a kind of it's focused on flat fees, it's focused on percentages, just so people also understand that you're interested in making sure that they're educated, successful. And then once that happens, the success looks like.
Yeah, so I think I gathered the question. Maybe say that one more time. I want to make sure I got it.
Yeah, sure. It's just a matter of helping people. So you take us through the education process, and then at the end, based on when you are able to find a particular like Deferred Sales Trust, at the end of that journey, it is a percentage fee? Is it something that is more flat fee based? Yeah, in terms of fees, because I think you're very clear about who the person is that you can help. You've helped to educate them, and really so that they have that kind of understanding. Like, what does that look like for them at the end of the day?
Great question. What's the cost of all this, right? And when does it make sense? Okay, so I'll use a deal we just did out of just south of Santa Cruz, it's on the central coast of California. And they sold the property for $7.9 million, and they were looking at a $2.48 million tax if they didn't do anything. And so she's in her 70s, wants to retire, doesn't want to chase properties. She's tired of the toilet trash liability, so she's decided the Deferred Sales Trust is a perfect fit for her. And so what were her fees? Well, the first $1 million of it was about 1.5%. So let's say you were selling $1 million property, $15,000. That's a one-time fee to the tax attorney. And you just pay it, and that includes the legal audit defense for the life of the trust, lifetime, right? So it's really important. The second part would be on that million, about 1.5% ongoing, recurring each year. Okay, and that's for that's for the trustee, myself, and that's for the financial advisor. And then there's like a miscellaneous of $1,200 for a tax return, $250 for a mark-to-market report, and so the trust is going to pay that. Now, the goal is to out-earn all of that. So instead of paying the tax on, in her scenario, let's fast forward to the full number. I think around 5.9 million went into the trust after debt was paid off. And so you're looking at, you could pay the 2.48 million, or you could pay the percentages on this full amount. Okay. And hopefully we'll out-earn that 2.48, realize that 2.48 is owed. It's just not triggered today. It's in a 0% interest rate from the government. So Billy, the government says, we'll allow you to defer this at 0% as long as you keep it invested in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and real estate or your business deals, right? And the goal is to out-earn on an interest rate hopefully about 8% on average over any 10-year period of time to pay the about 1.5% per year. So you say, oh, that's sweet, Brett. I would have paid the 2.48 million, but instead I got the full, let's say 6 million in there, and we have the full thing working for us, and that'll pay some fees on that, but we'll still net much more. So that's kind of hopefully that answers the question.
It does.
Yeah,
it does. And I mean, and it also just helps really clarify, because you've been so helpful in understanding that process and how you're working with people and how you're introducing them to other members of the team to ultimately help them be able to maximize the specific opportunity, provide them with more diversification and options. And as a result, yes, there are fees for that. And the idea is that you're out earning any fees that you would be paying. So it makes a lot of sense. So I know that there are a lot of things that we could continue to go into, but I really, because I feel the passion that you have around this. And I'm just curious if you were to close your eyes, Brett, and think, all right, listen, if we go 2 years in the future, like what do things look like for you? How many people are you helping, and kind of where are you driving your team in terms of the next stop in your destination over the next 2 years?
Yeah, thanks so much. So we're on a mission to train and equip 100,000, business professionals, financial advisors, commercial real estate syndicators, operators, commercial real estate brokers, luxury realtors, business brokers on this deferred sales trust. It'd be like, taking back 25 years ago, Billy, or 20 years ago, you didn't know about the 1031. And I'm saying, hey, Bill, I got this 1031 thing. And you're like, what's that? And you're like, well, you can sell real estate and defer the tax. Oh, well, that's what the 1031, it's been a while. It took a while for it to really catch on and people to really use it. Now everyone knows it, right? It's a blockbuster. Everyone knows the blockbuster. But 30 years ago, people didn't know about Blockbuster, and then they knew about it for a long time. Well, guess what? Netflix is going through the same thing. Even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, Netflix was so new, people didn't know about it. Now everyone knows about it. So the vision is to take the Deferred Sales Trust, bring it to the Netflix type of understanding and ease of use, and equipping business professionals to be able to help their clients escape feeling trapped by capital gains taxes. Why? So that they can give to causes that they believe in most, so that they can retire from the toilets and trash and liability, so that they can fund their next business dream or venture. One of the deals I did in Alabama, he sold a $2.6 million deal. He's in his early 40s. And he sold a business property and he moved it into the Deferred Sales Trust, and he used the funds to start his next dream, which is multifamily development. So he did non-like-kind through the Deferred Sales Trust because he didn't do 1031, and he's building 80 units in Tennessee. Okay. And so that's the transformational part of this. So we want to take that vision, take the education, couple it with the business professional so they can explode their business too. Because guess what? The business professional is being challenged by automation every single day. Automation is taking over technology. So what do you need? You need something that's more than transactional value. You need something that's transformational. And what's transformational? It's tax deferral, right? It's the biggest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. And it's giving them the ability to be free from the toilets, trash, and liability, have diversification, be out of debt. And when you connect those two, everything changes. And that's our goal. And then again, the back end of that is people can give to causes they believe in. They don't have to be forced into charity to do it, but they can give. They can direct the Deferred Sales Trust as much as they want to different charitable causes. And that's really the vision as well. Unlocking this capital that's pent up in these illiquid assets, moving them to cash flow producing assets so that they can give to causes they believe in most.
I think that is fantastic. And just the fact that you have that vision of being able to impact 100,000 lives that can then go out and impact others' lives and ultimately allow them to have many more options and be a part of that $17 trillion transfer that's happening like now, right? And so I think that is something just from a visionary standpoint really makes a lot of sense, Brett. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. And, I guess it's we're getting to that point of the conversation where there's this part of the show that's the going long final three. And the thing is, Brett, I never ask the going long final three unless you tell me that you're ready for me to ask you. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Awesome. So I'm really looking forward to this because I know you've gotten out there, you've traveled a lot. I would love to know, we started with you in California and, I'm here in Barcelona. And so I always want to know, right? What is your favorite European city, either that you visited or still on your bucket list to visit?
Oh, so Belgium by far, I went to France and that was amazing for the history and the culture. And I went to London. It was the closest to America. And it was also wonderful. But Belgium was my favorite. I don't know if you've been to Belgium, but if you've been to Belgium and you tasted the potatoes there, like for an American, it's like it blew my mind. And then also the beer was so good. Yeah. And I'm not a big beer guy. And I'm like, oh, I'll have this Belgian beer. So we had the opportunity to travel with some of my teammates. I played basketball in college, and we did like a friendly tour. So we actually toured
cool.
these three cities, playing different folks. And the best part about Belgium too was the people there were so kind. And I have never experienced it. So we play basketball, this intense basketball game. I have no clue. We're battling. The team's really good. That's actually one of the teams that actually beat us. The other teams we beat, they were really, really good. They're like a semi-pro team.
Okay.
And then they take us upstairs until they're like their restaurant/bar. Like it was like, this historic wood and the actual bar, and they're bringing us beers and they're bringing us food, and then we're all hanging out, and we're like, these guys are like our buddies. These are like our teammates, and we were just it was such a refreshing like type of friendly competition, right? And really bringing kind of the countries together and doing it through sports. And so Belgium by far was my favorite of the three so far. And I'd love to be to Greece. I'd love to be to Spain, and I'd love to spend time in Italy. Those are my three bucket list places.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Belgium as well. I spent my wife and I spent some time in Brussels a number of years back, and we were there for New Year's Eve. And I'm living here in Spain. I love it, and I lived in Italy as well. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. So thanks for sharing that. Next question is around lessons learned, right? And so you're a very successful person. You've had lots of life experiences. And I always kind of joke and say, hey, look, I know most successful people, you've probably only made one mistake, and I'm sure you're in that group, or maybe not. Maybe you've made more than one mistake. But I'd love to know, what lesson did you learn from maybe that one mistake that you kind of share with somebody else with the hopes that they don't make exactly the same mistake?
Yeah, good question. So I would say it was earlier in my career, and I'll give you like a actual deal story. I think this is good, and then I'll kind of give you the macro version. Okay, so the deal story was I was competing for a listing, and this is like this is like the crash, right? So like every dollar counts for my family. Like this could change everything, and I'm competing for this listing, and I'm working with the seller and developing the relationship, underwriting the property, getting all the way down to the 12th hour to listing the property. And he calls me kind of out of the blue and says, "Hey, I've got another kind of friend, that I've been. He's a residential agent, and I'd like you to partner with him. Or I'd like you to consider partnering him." Is kind of the way he said it. And what do you think? And I said, I'd like to compete for the business, and thinking that I have the cards, or that I have the value, and that I'm a multifamily. I had kind of the pride of what I was doing, and almost too much pride. And then like a week, 2 weeks goes by, and it's like nothing happens. I called him, "Hey, what's going on?" "Well, the property's been listed." And I'm like, and I lost the listing. And that agent ended up going with one of my competitors, who is actually really smart and really successful. And not only did they sell that property, but then they sold it again. And not only that, but they represented both sides, I think, on both properties. So literally like hundreds of thousands of dollars of commissions. And I'm going, oh my gosh, like had I just got out of my own way and just said, "Hey, client, this is important to you. It's important to me." And I think I would have asked the better question of, "Oh, tell me more about the relationship. Tell me more about him. Let me go meet with him. Let me go sit down." But I was kind of like closed off, and I let my pride get in the way, and that was a mistake. And so now on, I just go, "Look, I'm here to serve you and your best interest. Here are my thoughts, but let's do what you want to do. I'm here to work for you and work with you. And if you want to work with somebody else, let's work as a team. Let's all do it together." And so that is my one. That's the macro one. The big one was just learn you're working hard on yourself than you do on your job. This is a quote by Jim Rohn. He states, "If you work hard on your job, you'll make a living. If you work harder on yourself, you'll make a fortune." And the idea is not to make a bunch of money, although that's really cool because you can help a lot of people. The idea is to become everything you were created to be. I believe we've been given God-given gifts, and these gifts are given to us to be a blessing to our family and to others. But it's only when we actually use exercise those gifts and work on those gifts and work on our health, our finances, our personal development, our leadership, our spiritual walk, and also our career. We're working on our entire selves, that we become more, and when we become more, we can give more. And when we give more, we can earn more, which means we can give more. So it's making that shift. The longest time I was taught, go to school, get the grades, go get the job, go get the money. And those are all external things. And guess what? External things are temporary, Billy, right? But the internal things is what we become, right? And the value of what we become is always more valuable than what we get, right? What we get is only temporary. What we become is eternal. And so focusing on that also brings more fulfillment, brings more joy to myself and my family. And that changed everything when I switched my mindset about learning to work harder on myself than I did on my job.
Which I think is fantastic. So it's really about being internally focused for growth so that you can grow yourself. And then there's also the concept of really having the abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset, really working with others. And you've talked about that in multiple different times in this conversation, the way that you are working with and through teams, and ultimately doing that for your clients, your investors. And so that makes a lot of sense. And so we're going to get to the last question. And it really is about, you talked about internally, right? And focusing on the internal, and also want to understand about how you can fill your mind, right? And so help us understand, what book would you recommend to the Going Long audience?
Yeah, so the book I read every day is the Bible. So I'm a Christian, and so filling my mind with what I believe is God's word, God's authority, and God's truth. And as I do that, and I'm following and trying to be close to God, everything else can be going haywire, Billy, right? It could be the business is not doing well, or, this isn't going well. And this is a theme throughout my entire life. All of that could be going, COVID-19, the economy, all of these challenges. But if I'm close and I'm following God, I'm close to God, I'm at a peace. I can't explain the peace. And the opposite is true. If all those things are going great, I'm making a bunch of money, I'm successful, all these things. But if I'm not close to God, or if I'm not spending time in His Word, and I'm not connecting with Him, then there's something that's missing, right? I don't know what it is, but it's just not at peace. So the Bible is my source for renewing my mind. The second one would be a different book by Jim Rohn, and it's called The Seasons of Life, and it touches on just the winters, the falls, the springs, the summers, and it talks about the human condition and the human story, that we're always going through different parts of our lives, different seasons. And so, for example, the COVID-19 season, you could be considered, I think most would consider, a winter, right? Yep. A cold, bitter winter that's been very, very tough. But guess what? There's a spring coming, right? And it will, the sun will come out and things will get better. But in the meantime, it's not just it talks about what you do in the winters, right? Mm-hmm. It's making sure to reflect, to clarify the things that really are important to you, right? There's some positive things that have come from COVID-19 and that will change the world forever. And that's what this book really draws out, these questions of what you should be asking yourself in these winters. And the winters could be with your family. It could be with your kids. It could be with your finances. It could be with your country that you live in. The U.S. is going through a lot of tough things right now, and it's truly a winter in so many ways. But there is hope for a spring, right? And it talks about what we can do as leaders and how we can grow and make a change. And those are the things to focus on. And then when the spring comes, there's also things to consider. And then guess what? When the summer comes, don't rest, right? There's other things to talk about. So that book's amazing, called The Seasons of Life by Jim Rohn. The Seasons of Life by Jim Rohn. Fantastic. And we are going to take the Bible because that was your first one. So, but we will, we'll see how we can include them both. But, I guess, there's so many things. I mean, just talking about from the very beginning and talking about, your involvement in sport and working with teams, and then being able to recognize that something was in the world of the blockbuster world, and you want to be able to take something that was already there. You want to now expand on that, continue to educate the marketplace. You want to then be able to positively impact 100,000 lives so that you can ultimately impact so many more, to provide our audience or people in the world with new options and be able to do with those options the things that give them the most impact on their life. And so with so many different examples that you've shared with us, with so many positive things that you are doing, Brett, I know that there's so many people that are part of our listening to the conversation today and watching us on the video that really want to find out, how can they engage more with you? How can they engage more with your team? So can you help us understand what is the best way to connect with you and your team? Great. Thank you so much, Bill. Yeah, two ways. So if you're a business professional, I want you to go to experttaxsecrets.com. And I want you to look at that offer for you to get equipped and take your first step towards transformational exit planning for your clients. That's business brokers, financial advisors, again, commercial real estate syndicators, operators, luxury realtors. You should go there and check that out. If you are an owner or if you're a business professional, you want to check out our website, go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. And there you can schedule a free consultation. You can also get access to our Deferred Sales Trust calculator, and you can download our free ebook, Sell Your Real Estate or Business Smarter in 9 Steps, and you can check that out right now. Fantastic. So capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. And then can you repeat one more time the
the expert tax.
ExpertTaxSecrets.com.
ExpertTaxSecrets.com. Okay, fantastic. And we'll also include those in the show notes as well, Brett. So listen, I really would like to thank you for taking the time, investing the time with me and with our Going Long audience today. It's been very, very useful, very helpful, very impactful. And so thank you very much for investing time with us today.
It's been my pleasure, Billy. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, fantastic. And to the Going Long audience, listen, thanks once again as well for investing your time with Brett and I. Brett really, really helped to uncover something that is new for us for the first time for many of us to go and understand more about the Deferred Sales Trust, and also talk to us about more of the legacy, which was a 1031 exchange. And he also talked about some of the other different concepts and really understanding how being a part of a team, you can have more options to do what it is that you really want to do and invest your time, et cetera. So, I know you got a lot of value from this. So feel free to share today's episode with at least 2 or 3 other friends so that they can also be positively impacted by the things that Brett shared with us today. We'd love to get a review from you as well. I mean, share the things that you really liked and help Brett and I know what are the things that you found the most value in. What would you like to hear from Brett maybe in the next time that he comes back to visit us? And if you want to leave a 5-star review, go ahead and do that as well. So until then, I know I'm really, really looking forward to welcoming you back on the next episode of the Going Long podcast. So like I said, until then, go out and make it a great day. Thank you.
Wow, don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? When I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me like a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long-distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.